here by a terrific group today. At the desk here with me is CNN's John King and Kristen Holmes. And Alyse Adamson, a former federal prosecutor. Also joining us is Andrew McCabe, a CNN senior law enforcement analyst and former deputy director of the FBI. Andy, I'm going to start with you. Describe what it takes to get a warrant or warrants like this for a home and an office.
Yeah, sure. So FBI agents sat down and worked with an assistant United States attorney, and they had to draft an affidavit, which is like a statement of facts that supports a request for a search warrant. And in that affidavit, they include all the facts that they think are necessary to convince a judge that there is probable cause to believe that there is evidence of a crime in that location. And this location obviously is John Bolton's house. So we know they had some degree of information or evidence because we know the judge signed that warrant, and that's what gives them the right to be there. We don't know what that information is. We don't know if it's similar to information around the original allegations about classified information in the book that he published, or whether it has to do with any more recent work or comments or writings by John Bolton. The interesting thing, though, Dana, is a warrant along those lines would entitle the FBI to search for any information that might be classified in the residence. And as we all know, information can be in many forms. It can be paper documents, records, notebooks, but it can also be electronics devices or really anything, any piece of electronic media that can store information. So because the possibilities are so broad there, it essentially gives the agents the opportunity to look in every location in the house, any place where you could possibly store something along those lines, a piece of paper, an envelope, a notebook, whatever, is within the realm of the search. That's why it's taking as long as it is. Typically, these searches go on for hours and hours because you get to look in every drawer, every box, every closet, every room, and it takes a while.
All right, thank you so much. And Alyse, I want to go to you. How, in your experience as a prosecutor, how high is the bar, or does it need to be, to get a judge to sign off on things like this?
Yeah, Dana, well, it's very important for people to understand that probable cause is a much lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what we talk about the most because that's the standard at trial. Probable cause is a lower standard. It's, reasonable belief, but it is important for people to know that you still need to establish some evidence. There was a joke that you could indict in a ham sandwich, for instance. That's the standard for an indictment as well. But the reality is, when you are presenting an affidavit to a judge, they need to see some evidence. And what's interesting here is that the potential offenses would be knowing and intentional. So they would also have to establish some evidence that Bolton knew that he was retaining these documents.
So interesting. And John, I want you to weigh in, and as you do, I just want to put up on the screen, I'm sure our viewers are very familiar with John Bolton. He's been on our air in and around the Russia negotiations and the negotiations with Ukraine and European leaders, but he obviously was the national security advisor during Trump 1. And at issue, it seems, maybe there is something new, as Andy said, but it seems to be around that 2020 book. Just some quotes from that book. Trump is unfit to be president. If his first 4 years were bad, a second 4 will be worse. Trump really cares only about retribution for himself, and it will consume much of a second term. That gives you a flavor of what was in it.
And John Bolton sat in this very space a few days ago during the Trump-Putin summit and during the conversations with European leaders afterwards, and was harshly critical of President Trump's approach to the Ukraine issue and what John Bolton has described as his constantly being played by Putin. So here's the question. The burden of proof is now on the government to prove that they had a reason to do this against someone who served, whether you agree with his politics or not, agree with his policy or not, served the United States government as a public servant in several administrations, years after years, knows national security law incredibly well, is known to be very cautious and conservative. So the burden of proof is on the government to prove that this is a valid investigation, not a power play designed to intimidate a Trump critic who is on television all the time. And that the FBI director posts in the middle of it all, there's no direct connection to Bolton, so it's a bit of speculation, but in the middle of it all, no one is above the law, that it happens right after the president says, I don't like this official on the Federal Reserve, and the next day the Justice Department starts an investigation and announces that publicly. That's the part where Trump critics say, wait a minute. Are you on a power trip here? Are you using your powers to go after your critics or people you don't want in positions? So the burden is on them to prove that that's not what this is about. The question is, will they meet that burden?
Well, and to that point, this is just last week, August 13th, the president put on his Truth Social platform, constantly talking about the media, and he said constantly quoting fired losers and really dumb people like John Bolton, who just said that even though the meeting is on American soil, Putin has already won. What's that all about?
Yeah, and I can tell you that President Trump, one of the things he's been angriest about for the last week and a half has been the coverage of his Alaska summit. He felt like he was not treated fairly in the media. He was angry about various reporters saying that he seemed unhappy in the press conference, the fact that he didn't take questions, and he was upset with John Bolton's critique of him as well. So that was all happening behind the scenes. Obviously, it plays out there too. And the one thing I do think is interesting about all of this is that those classified documents that were in the book, those were originally approved by career officials at the White House, which is likely one of the reasons they could say John Bolton knew what he was putting out there was classified, but he got it cleared. Then it was Trump loyalists who came in and tried to stop him from publishing that. Of course, we remember Donald Trump saying he was going to throw him in jail over the book. So that's probably where this idea of what he knew or didn't know is, because he had actual conversations trying to get this cleared for his book.
Yeah, right. He went through the process. The question is who approved it, and that was, you're right, that was a big point of contention in Trump 1. Andy, I want to bring you back in and just put up some of the quotes that John was referring to from the current heads of the Justice Department and FBI. This is Pam Bondi, 7:45 a.m. America's safety isn't negotiable. Justice will be pursued always during the raid. Kash Patel Post, 7:03 a.m. No one is above the law. FBI agents on a mission. How unusual is that kind of post from the heads of the law enforcement agencies in America while this high-profile raid is going on?
I can't think of another FBI director or attorney general, and I worked for many of them, who would have done something similar. This is just simply not the way Department of Justice employees at the department or the Bureau operate. We understand that there's all kinds of unfavorable attention and reputation impact that comes along with having something happen like what's happening at John Bolton's house right now. In the past, DOJ leadership has always taken the role like, we don't go out of our way to draw suspicion or castigate people unless we are doing it officially in court in the form of an indictment and then going into court and proving our case. They speak through the court filings, and that is it. So I think what you're seeing from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino is pretty typical for them, but it is absolutely atypical for anyone else who's ever served in those roles. And I think it really degrades the Bureau and the department's image and legitimacy in the way that they are so blatantly trying to generate social media attention for themselves at the expense of not just the people who are being investigated, but also the investigators who are doing that work. I can't think of anyone at the FBI who would call attention to a search warrant that, while it's taking place. I mean, you never want, tactically, you would never want to draw attention to something like that. Search warrants can be very volatile scenes, establishing security, getting in professionally, doing your job, and getting out as quickly as you can. None of that is helped by drawing public attention to what's going on there.
A lot of head nodding at this table.
Well, just remember, Trump and those people you just mentioned, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the Deputy, they are the ones who said during the Biden administration, these people are weaponizing the Justice Department. They are making public statements, essentially coming to conclusions, even while the search is underway. You know, in school, and I think the lawyers are all taught about this thing called innocent until proven guilty. That used to be pretty much a bedrock foundation of the United States government and the United States legal system, but now you have the heads of the law enforcement agencies essentially saying John Bolton's guilty even before the search is conducted.
That's right. I mean, it looks like they're trying to try this in the court of public opinion. I mean, it is still early, so we don't know if there's any real merit to this investigation, but everybody now is aware that there is an ongoing investigation. And to Andy's point, highly unusual, really quite unprecedented for the heads of these departments to make these statements during an ongoing active search warrant. And to his point also, probably irresponsible.
It's the kind of stuff that John Bolton's lawyers, if he ends up in court, are going to be able to use to claim prejudice. The question is, does it ever end up in court, or is this about something else?
Yeah, well, there are lots of questions. Don't go